I don't know how long this post will stay up. Maybe I'll delete it in an hour. Maybe sooner. Because if anyone in my real life ever found it, I don't think I could face them again. Even as I type this, my hands won't stop shaking. I used to roll my eyes at women who shared stories like this. Women who said they didn't mean for it to happen. But now I am one of them. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I destroyed everything. A marriage. A family. A man who once looked at me like I was his entire world. Now, I sit alone in a house that feels too quiet, holding a baby my husband refuses to even look at, wondering how something that once felt unbreakable turned into dust. I wish I could tell you this was just a mistake, that it was one night of weakness, one lapse in judgment. But it wasn't that simple. It never is. Because sometimes, love doesn't end in screaming matches. It ends in silence, in shame, in a truth you can't run from no matter how hard you try. So before you judge me, just listen till the end. Because this isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about loneliness, guilt, and the one choice that shattered everything I thought I was. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories, where every secret has a heartbeat, and every confession reminds you just how fragile love can be. My name is Sarah. I'm 35. My husband Ethan is 37. We were married for 10 years. To anyone looking from the outside, we looked perfect. Stable careers, a warm home, families that adored us. People used to say we were the kind of couple that had it all. I used to smile and agree, pretending I didn't feel the quiet emptiness growing inside me. Ethan was a good man. Steady. Loyal. The kind of man people described as dependable. But his job consumed him. Endless hours, late nights, business trips that stretched into weeks. When he was home, he was exhausted, present in body but somewhere else in spirit. Our marriage slowly slipped into a rhythm of repetition. Dinner. Small talk. Sleep. Repeat. Intimacy faded like a candle burning itself out. I told myself that's what marriage becomes after years, comfort instead of passion. But some nights, lying next to him, I missed what we once had. I missed the spark, the laughter, the feeling of being wanted. Then Ryan entered my life. He was a coworker, 34, quick-witted, magnetic, the kind of man who made every room lighter just by walking in. It started innocently. Compliments about my earrings, my new dress, my presentation at work. I brushed them off, but secretly I felt something awaken. I began looking forward to work again, to his teasing, his attention, the way he actually listened when I spoke. Ethan hadn't looked at me that way in years. When you've been starved of affection long enough, even crumbs feel like a feast. I told myself it was harmless, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Everything changed one night after a work event. Most people had left. The office was quiet, empty. Ryan and I lingered, talking about movies, life, anything to avoid the silence. Then suddenly the air shifted, heavier, charged. He leaned in and kissed me. My mind screamed no, but my body didn't move. I kissed him back. That was the line I never thought I'd cross. And once you take one step over it, every next step becomes easier. I went home that night telling myself it was a mistake, that I'd never let it happen again. But the next day when he texted asking to see me, I didn't say no. And so the affair began. Lunch breaks at hotels. His apartment when his roommate was gone. Sometimes even the office after hours, the thrill and fear twisting together until I couldn't tell one from the other. Every time I swore it would be the last. Every time guilt clawed at me. But I was hooked, addicted to the way he made me feel alive. Ethan was security. Ryan was electricity. And I wanted both. But excitement isn't love. It's a spark that burns hot and dies fast. And I was gambling my whole life on that flame. Months slipped by. I became a professional liar. Late night meetings. Deleted messages. Ryan's name changed to Laura in my phone. I told myself I was in control. But in truth I was spiraling, buried under lies I couldn't keep straight. Then came the moment that shattered everything. I was late. A week. Then 2. My chest tightened as I stared at the pregnancy test, praying for one line. But 2 appeared, pink, undeniable. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. "It's Ethan's," I whispered. "It has to be." But I knew the truth. We hadn't been intimate in weeks. Ryan and I, we had. Panic took over. I couldn't tell Ryan he'd disappear. I couldn't tell Ethan he'd leave me instantly. So I did the only thing I could. I pretended. I smiled through the fear. I told myself maybe the baby would look like Ethan. Maybe fate would take pity on me. But fate doesn't protect liars. It exposes them, slowly, painfully. During my pregnancy, Ethan became someone else. Gentle. Attentive. He cooked for me, drove me to appointments, rubbed my swollen feet after work. Every kind thing he did was a knife to the heart. Because while he was loving me, I was carrying another man's child. So many nights I almost told him. I imagined falling at his feet, confessing everything, begging for forgiveness. But then I'd see his face in my mind, broken, devastated, and the words would die on my tongue. I thought I was hiding it well, but Ethan wasn't blind. He started noticing things. The way I flinched at certain questions. The messages I checked twice before opening. Rough day at work? Why were you late? Who's been texting you so much lately? His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp, like a man quietly collecting evidence. That's when the truth sank in. Ethan already knew. He was just waiting for the right moment to confront me. Those last months were torture. Every kick from the baby reminded me that the truth had a heartbeat. Every smile from Ethan felt like a goodbye in disguise. Eventually I stopped seeing Ryan. I told him I needed space. He didn't take it well, called me selfish, dramatic. I ignored him. I couldn't balance two collapsing worlds. Still, I clung to hope that when the baby arrived, Ethan would hold him and love would blind him from the truth. But lies have short lifespans. I went into labor on a rainy Thursday evening. Ethan drove me to the hospital, quiet, unreadable. He held my hand through the pain, whispered reassurances. For a fleeting moment, I believed we might survive this. When our son was born, I cried harder than I ever had. He was perfect, tiny fingers, dark hair, a soft cry that felt like redemption. I wanted to believe he was Ethan's. I looked up at my husband, praying for a smile. But his face was cold, distant. He didn't move closer, didn't reach for the baby. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, staring like I was a stranger. My mother and his mother were beaming, hovering around the crib, completely oblivious. But Ethan's silence screamed louder than any accusation. Then the nurse entered, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Campbell," she said, "we'll need your signature for the birth certificate." Ethan didn't hesitate. His voice was flat, final. "I'll sign it," he said, "after the DNA test proves he's mine." And just like that, everything I'd tried to hide came crashing down. The air around me turned to ice. For a split second, it felt as though the floor had been ripped out from beneath my feet. My breath caught in my throat as my head snapped toward him, disbelief tightening every muscle in my body. "Ethan, what are you saying?" His eyes locked onto mine, sharp, cold, and filled with a kind of pain I had never seen before. "I'm saying I know you cheated." The room exploded. My mother gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. Ethan's mother scolded him, her voice trembling, telling him not to speak such cruel words when I had just given birth. But Ethan didn't even blink. His focus stayed glued to me, steady, unyielding, and that's when I realized just how long he'd been carrying this storm inside him. I shook my head violently, clutching the baby closer to my chest as if he could somehow shield me from what was happening. "No, Ethan, no, I didn't." But before I could even finish, his voice sliced through the chaos like a blade. "Then should I call Ryan? Should I ask him to come here and explain it to everyone?" My heart stopped. My body jolted as though I'd been struck by lightning. He knew. Not guessed. Not suspected. He knew. My lips trembled as my eyes welled up with tears. I don't know what you're talking about," I stammered. Ethan's expression didn't change. Calmly, almost mechanically, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. My stomach turned to lead. I already knew what it was before he even opened it. He unfolded it slowly, deliberately, like he wanted every second to burn. "Then explain this." It was a printed screenshot, a message I had sent Ryan months ago. "My husband should never know about you and me. I don't want anything to do with you anymore." A cold rush of nausea hit me. My mother covered her mouth, gasping in shock. Ethan's mother's face twisted in disgust. And Ethan, he just stood there holding that paper like it was a weapon forged from betrayal. How did you? My voice cracked, barely a whisper. Ryan gave it to me, Ethan replied simply. His tone had no emotion, just finality. That was the moment the ground gave way. I broke down completely. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched my baby tighter, my body shaking uncontrollably. My tears soaked into his blanket as I mumbled through broken sobs. He said no one would ever know, he promised. But Ethan wasn't moved. His voice was ice. So, you did sleep with him. You carried his child. I shook my head frantically. No, Ethan, it wasn't like that, please. But his eyes were empty, hollow, like something inside him had already died. I knew for 4 months, he said flatly. I waited for this day, for the truth to be born with him. His words shattered me. He had known all along. Every soft touch, every gentle smile, every moment he'd held my hand, it hadn't been for me. It had been for the baby. He had been waiting for proof. Ethan, please, I begged. We can fix this. Don't give up on us. He turned slightly, jaw clenched, eyes blazing with quiet rage. If the baby is mine, I'll be his father. If not, I'm done with both of you. My mother pleaded with him to stop, to think of the child. His mother shook her head in disgust, her voice dripping with fury as she called me careless, selfish. The world was spinning. My vision blurred as shame, regret, and fear suffocated me. But Ethan's voice cut through it all. Come, Cole, final. When you're discharged, he said, go with your mother. You're not coming back to my house. That was it. The end. I cried harder than I ever had in my life. The man I loved, the man I betrayed, had just ended our marriage in a hospital room. And the worst part was, he was right. That night, lying in that hospital bed, holding my son against my chest, I felt the crushing weight of my choices. I had ruined everything. My marriage, my husband's trust, my family's respect, my child's future. And there was no undoing it. Leaving the hospital felt like walking out of one life and stumbling into another, a version of myself that was shattered, hollow, and suffocating. Ethan didn't come to pick me up. My mother did. She carried my bag while I held my baby, my face burning as the nurses whispered behind me. They all knew. I was that woman, the one whose husband refused to sign the birth certificate. Back at my mother's house, I sat alone in my childhood bedroom, rocking my newborn son in the same corner where I once played with dolls. I cried silently into his tiny blanket, wanting so desperately to love him purely. But every time I looked at his face, guilt rose like a tide. He was innocent, yet he was living proof of my betrayal. Ethan's words echoed in my head relentlessly. If the baby is mine, I'll be his father. If not, I'm done. 2 weeks later, the DNA results came. Ethan arrived at my mother's house, his face expressionless, the envelope clutched in his hand. He didn't even look at me when he handed it to her. Read it out loud, he said coldly. My mother's hands trembled as she opened it. Her lips quivered as she whispered, chances of paternity, 0%. Ethan Campbell is not the father. The room fell dead silent except for the soft cry of my baby. My mother sank into a chair, holding her head. Ethan's mother stared at me like I was something unholy. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. It was over. Officially. Ethan wasn't the father, and I had destroyed everything. Ethan, please, I choked out. We can find a way. Don't, he snapped, stepping back. His eyes burned with disgust. You made your choice when you opened your legs for him. Don't you dare ask me to pick up the pieces. I broke down completely, sobbing, begging him to hold the baby just once, but he refused. Turning to his mother, he muttered, "Let's go." Before leaving, his mother glanced at me one last time. You destroyed my son, Sarah. And you took away a grandchild I thought was mine. Her words gutted me. In the following weeks, Ethan filed for divorce, adultery cited in bold letters. I tried calling him, texting him, begging for a chance to explain, but he never responded. He froze the accounts, canceled my cards, and through his lawyer made it clear I was no longer welcome in the home we'd built together. And Ryan, the real father, vanished, blocked me everywhere. When I finally confronted him at his workplace, he looked me dead in the eye and said, "I never wanted this. I don't want baggage." I stood there in that parking lot, holding my baby, tears streaming down my face, realizing I had been nothing more than a disposable mistake to both men. When the court hearings began, the humiliation reached its peak. Everything came out: the affair, the messages, the proof Ethan had collected. His lawyer painted me as reckless, deceitful, unfit. And I had no defense. "The evidence is clear," his attorney said, holding up the printed messages. "This woman deceived my client for months, carried another man's child, and now expects him to bear responsibility for a life that isn't his." I sat there silently, tears falling down my face. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to explain. I told them I had been lonely, that Ethan had been distant, always buried in work, that I had made a mistake I could never undo. But no words could change what I had done. My voice trembled as I tried to speak. I never meant to hurt him. I was just weak. Ethan's lawyer didn't flinch. His tone was cold, slicing through the silence of the courtroom. "So, your answer to loneliness was betrayal? Your solution was to bring another man's child into your husband's home? And now you expect this court to reward that weakness?" I had no words left. Every excuse that came to mind felt hollow, pitiful. Even to my own ears, they sounded like lies. The breaking point came when I lost control on the witness stand. Tears streamed down my face and I choked out the truth I'd buried for so long. I just wanted to feel alive again, to feel wanted. And I made the worst mistake of my life chasing that. The entire courtroom froze. You could hear the air shift. Even the judge's face hardened with quiet disgust. I wanted the floor to open beneath me, to disappear, to erase myself from that moment. Ethan sat there motionless, his jaw tight, his eyes distant. Not once did he look at me. When the judge's gavel finally came down, it felt like my world cracked in half. The words echoed in my head: marriage dissolved, assets divided, case closed. 10 years of love and memories, gone in seconds. I walked out of that courthouse a ghost. Half of everything we owned was now legally mine, but I'd never felt emptier. Ethan was gone. Our home, our vows, our dreams, gone. The man who once loved me more than anyone now looked at me as if I were poison. That night, I went home holding my son. His little face pressed against my chest as I whispered through my tears, "It's just you and me now." But deep inside, I knew that wasn't true. I hadn't just destroyed a marriage. I had destroyed the life my child could have had, the life of a boy who should have grown up with a father's arms to protect him. And no matter how many times I told myself that he was innocent, I couldn't silence the voice that whispered that I had cursed him before he even took his first breath. When the gavel fell, it didn't feel real. I sat frozen, staring straight ahead as Ethan walked out without even glancing back. My lawyer said something, maybe words of sympathy, but I couldn't hear him. All I could hear was that echo: marriage dissolved, case closed. Back at my mother's house, I laid my baby gently in his crib. I watched his tiny chest rise and fall, his small hands curling in his sleep. He was perfect, blameless. And yet, in my twisted guilt, I looked at him and saw the reason everything had fallen apart. I hated myself for even thinking it. It wasn't his fault. None of this was his fault. It was mine. I was the one who opened the door to Ryan. I was the one who betrayed Ethan's trust. My son was just the living proof of my weakness. Weeks turned into months. I tried to adjust to my new reality, the endless feedings, the exhaustion, the quiet nights where the silence screamed louder than any argument ever had. There was no Ethan to share the weight, no husband to lean on when I felt like collapsing. Sometimes I caught myself glancing at the door, imagining him walking in, forgiving me, holding me again. But that knock never came. Instead came whispers. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors started looking at me differently. Even family gatherings felt colder, polite smiles hiding judgment that hung in the air like smoke. Everyone knew. Everyone knew what I had done, and that I had lost everything because of it. Ryan had vanished completely. He didn't just block my number, he quit the company, moved cities, disappeared as if I had never existed. Through a former coworker, I heard he was seeing someone new. someone younger, someone unburdened by guilt and mistakes. Meanwhile, I was left behind, with a baby, the silence, and the wreckage of the life I'd burned down. My mother did her best to be supportive, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She loved me, yes, but she couldn't understand me, and I couldn't explain myself. How do you explain ruining everything for a fleeting affair? How do you justify trading a loyal husband for a moment of weakness? You don't. There are no answers that don't sound pathetic. The hardest blow came months later when I heard Ethan was seeing someone new. A mutual friend mentioned she was kind, steady, the kind of woman he deserved. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. But I wasn't. I was jealous, not because I still thought I deserved him, but because I knew she was getting the version of him I destroyed. A good man. A loyal man. The man I would never have again. At night, when my baby cried, I would hold him close and whisper into his hair, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I ruined your life before it even began. I'm sorry you'll never know the father you should have had. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger." Sometimes I cried so hard that my body shook, terrified I'd wake him. But he never stirred. He'd nestle closer, peaceful in ways I no longer remembered how to be. I still think about Ethan every single day, about the way his eyes looked that day in the hospital, filled with a hurt that I caused. I replay every conversation, every choice, every night I wish I had walked away instead of letting Ryan's touch destroy my world. But wishes don't undo reality. The truth is simple, I shattered my own life. I betrayed the man who loved me unconditionally. I carried another man's child and expected my husband to raise him. And now I live with that truth every single day. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder what will happen when my son is old enough to ask questions. When he asks, "Why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" What will I say? Do I lie to him? Or do I tell him the brutal truth, that his mother's selfishness cost him a father? How do you look into a child's eyes and admit that you destroyed his life before he even had the chance to live it? I don't know. All I know is, I loved Ethan, deeply, truly. But I let loneliness, desire, and weakness blind me. And now I pay the price for it, every single day. Ethan has moved on. Ryan has vanished. My family tolerates me, but they don't respect me anymore. My friends? Gone, all of them. And here I am, raising a son who deserves far more than the broken woman he calls his mother. This is my confession. I cheated on my husband. I carried another man's child. And in doing so, I destroyed the only life I ever wanted. Ethan refuses to sign the birth certificate. He won't even look at me, and he's right not to. Because the only person to blame is me. That's the truth I'll carry to my grave. A truth carved into every sleepless night, every quiet morning, every look of pity I can't stand to see. If this story moved you, or made you reflect on the cost of betrayal, subscribe to Dark Infidelity Stories. Here, every secret burns, every confession bleeds, and every heartbreak leaves a lesson behind. Don't forget to like, share, and comment below, because sometimes the darkest stories are the ones that remind us what love really costs.